Hello everybody. And yes, so we have been running the Central London Young Archaeologists Club for nearly 24 years now, and yes, 24 years this year. So tonight we're just going to give you a bit of a flavour of what we actually do. Let's make sure I can make this work. So we're going to start off telling you how the club began, because we were there at the beginning, how it operates, so what we tend to do. We've got a few examples of some sessions, and for those of you in the room, we've got a few objects down there that we've made over the years with the children. And we're going to finish up with a few challenges that we've had or that we face at the moment, and what's going to happen in the future. So,
in the beginning, there was a black hole. It is an archaeology club, not an astronomy club. This will make more sense when I've done a bit of scene setting about how the club actually started. So I'd always had an armchair interest in archaeology and history. Back in 1999, my daughter was looking at universities. She wanted to study archaeology and history, and I accompanied her on visits to various universities, having a look at the archaeology departments. She ended up at the University of Sheffield doing a degree in archaeology and prehistory. Sadly, that renowned department no longer exists because of funding issues and all sorts. A few years ago there was a lot in the news about that. So she went off there and suffering with empty nest syndrome a bit, and I thought, well, I'd quite like to, take my interest further. So I enrolled on the Birkbeck Certificate in British Archaeology course, a 3-year evening course, and that's the first year was taught by Hedley Swain, who at that time was in the early department at the Museum of London, and he taught the prehistory year. In the second year, it was Dear Harvey, who I was hoping to say hello to tonight, but he's not here, who taught the Roman year, and John Cotton, who covered the Anglo-Saxons in the third year. So my career background up to that point was in teaching, careers guidance, and as a project manager at an education business partnership, I think, yes, here we are, in Lewisham. But I left that job round about the year 2000, 2001 for a completely different role in the civil service. But that picture on the left is me in the middle looking very youthful in a yellow hard hat. It was one of the things I did as a project manager was I used to try and link education and business through projects, hence being a project manager. And this was on a day trip out with Lewisham secondary school teachers. And I think you can probably maybe take a guess at where we were at that point. We were actually inside the Millennium Dome as it was being constructed, and we had a look at that. We also learned about the regeneration of the Greenwich Peninsula. We were looking at careers over the river in Canary Wharf. Very few Lewisham children had ever been outside Lewisham into central London, let alone Canary Wharf. And we also went down to Bluewater, which was at that point under construction in the quarry. So that's the sort of thing I was getting up to there. And I was working with secondary schools and primary schools, and I'd earlier had a bit of teaching experience as well. So when I changed jobs, I knew I'd miss contact with young people, so I thought I'd volunteer in my spare time. So combining my skill set gained from working with young people and with history and archaeology, I phoned the Council for British Archaeology in York, asking if they could put me in touch with a Young Archaeologists Club in London where I could volunteer. There was a silence at the end of the phone, and she said, "London is a black hole. In fact, Greater London is a black hole. There are no clubs in the area," followed by, "Would you consider setting one up?" Well, I was sort of reeled back a bit at that, but it gave me food for thought. So I started to scope out the idea, along with some people I'd made friends with on the Birkbeck course. But we quickly realised that it was going to be very difficult to find and fund premises to hold meetings regularly. I think Lamas knows all about the difficulty of finding premises to hold meetings. But I didn't give up on the idea. I kind of put it on a back burner, and I thought I'd find some other form of volunteering. And at that point, the Big Dig came up. And some of you will be, I'm sure, familiar with this. This was, as in its early format, John Shepherd had devised this very innovative idea of small sections filled with sand and sort of seeded, if you like, with Roman sherds of pottery, and the children would come in and they'd have half an hour or so of excavating, and they needed volunteers to basically shovel the sand that was excavated back in after, so it was ready for the next lot of children to come in. And it was there that I met Karen.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Right, my turn. Okay, so I started off, just a bit of background about me, in the city. I worked for insurance brokers for about 18 years in all, 2 different ones. And while I was there, after about 10, 12 years, I suddenly decided, I don't really want to do insurance for the rest of my life. I'd rather do something that's a bit more, you've been there, a bit more interesting. And I've always loved history, so I looked around and realised that I'd need a degree. I just went into the city straight from school. So I enrolled on a degree with the Open University, and I did a 6-year course, humanities course with them. So I got my degree, hooray! And off I went, and then I realised that wasn't enough. I needed experience. Everything I tried to go for, I said, oh, you haven't got any experience. So in about 2000, I think it was, my partner and I, Rob, we joined Lammas. And they had an open day just before Lammas opened properly, just before the Archaeological Archive opened properly. They had Lammas organised a visit, so off we went. And it's this place in the middle of nowhere. Where are we going? But we went there and we had a walk round, and John Shepherd took us round, and I thought, yes, this is where I want to work. This is just what I want to do, because I'm a bit nerdy and I like organising things. So. So I asked John, how do I get a job here? And he said, well, you could try volunteering for a bit. So I took a few weeks off in the summer and volunteered, and I enjoyed it. And then, because I was on the books, I got called up when they were going to do the Big Dig and said, would you like to come and volunteer with that? Which is where I met Annie. And then while I was doing that, I bumped into John Shepherd again, and he said, oh, we might have a job for you. All excited. It was only a year's contract, but I went for it and I got the job, and I ended up in the archive for a bit. I was there for 3 years in all. In the records department, I wasn't in the finds bit, I was in the records bit, but that suited me fine. And when that contract finished, I was lucky enough to be offered a job up in Mola, who were also looking for an archivist because their head of archive had just gone on maternity leave, and their other archivists were all part-time, so they needed somebody who was going to be there all the time. So I pushed up upstairs, and I stayed there for 15 years. So I just retired in 2020, great timing, but there you go. And I'll put this picture up there because while I was up there, while I was in Mola, my team ran a volunteer programme to repackage all the finds that came from the Guildhall Yard dig, which was in 1992. So the standards weren't particularly great, but there were thousands of boxes of this stuff. And the Guildhall Yard was where they found the amphitheatre, so it was a huge site. And this was one of the teams of volunteers. And that young lady there, who's smiling at the camera, that young lady is Grace. And Grace started off with the Young Archaeologists Club as one of our members. She then came along and helped for a while. She was a helper with us. She did various sort of in and out jobs in heritage, trying to get herself established. And then she came along and volunteered on this programme. She was there for the whole programme, which was about 3 years, I think, in all. And she now works in the Archaeological Archive. So her persistence paid off, and as a young archaeologist, she has finally got into heritage. So, you?
Yeah. So, National YAC put Louise Doughty in touch with me. Louise was a recent Cambridge graduate who was looking to get into a career in the museum and cultural sector. and she was also interested in volunteering, and she subsequently got a job at the Museum of London, and she's still there actually. I think she's currently head of exhibitions and displays.
Yes.
She was a graduate at the time, and she had children fairly soon after, so she then...
Yeah. I think she was with us for about 5 years or so.
Yeah. So we now had a small but enthusiastic group of volunteers who fortuitously found themselves in the right place at the right time, because the Lark, as Karen mentioned, was about to open, and both John Shepherd and Hedley Swain were keen to help us. And they gave us free use of meeting rooms, and they gave us storage space in the way of a cupboard. And we were joined by Janneke Langveld, who was at that time working at the Lark, and dear Richard Gilpin, who was volunteering at the museum, as well as other volunteers that I'd met on the Birkbeck course. And after some deliberation, this is the kind of mission statement that we came up with for the club. The Central London Young Archaeologists Club aims to provide a stimulating, entertaining and safe learning environment in which London children are encouraged to explore and develop a lifelong interest in their archaeological and historical heritage. We like to think that over the years we've more or less achieved that. Throughout this talk you will see that we've put in some quotes, some feedback from members and their parents, which I hope will illustrate that we have. So, yes, I think that's over to you, Karen, isn't it?
So, after that, the Museum of London adopted the club as a Linking Lives project, which attracted some funding from a city law firm called Slaughter and May, of £2,000, which enabled us to set up and get going, really, so that was really good. So we had our first meeting in May at Mortimer Wheeler House, and we managed to get a few of the local children along to that. And then Slaughter and May asked if we could have a sort of an official launch at their offices. So we went along with some of our new members. We got the nice t-shirts, those red t-shirts are our club t-shirts.
With some of the money.
With some of their money, yeah. And they do have sponsored by Slaughter and May on the sleeves, actually. So they weren't silly. And I've still got mine, although it's a bit of a state these days, but I still wear it. And they, this was in their foyer, and they had this Hedley there talking to some of the people who worked there. They engaged with the children, and the children were showing them what they had there. So we had some Roman artefacts and some enviro stuff, I seem to remember, and all sorts of things. So without the initial support of the museum and that funding, it would have taken us a lot longer to get going. So when John moved on from the Lark, the club continued to receive help from Roy, who took over as the head of the Lark, and from lots of the other museum and Mola staff, especially the specialist team, are always very helpful to us. And one of the big advantages of being based there was that we could draw on their expertise and their knowledge, and we had all the archaeological material in the archive that we could get out and have a look at. But sadly, we no longer have that because we can't be based there anymore. But we do really miss having that material with us. So, what do? So, we meet. We try to have 10 meetings every year. We don't do Januaries, and we don't do August because everyone's on holiday in August, so we don't get anybody. We run from about 10:30 to 12:30, sometimes a bit longer depending what we're doing. Following the CBA guidelines, our age group is from the age of 8 to 16, although it generally is from about 8 to about 12. They sort of disappear off after that because they've got too many other things going on. Initially, we only took children from the inner London boroughs, so the city and all the boroughs that immediately surrounded it. But nowadays, we're not so fussy. We'll take anybody because there just aren't really any other clubs in London. So, apart from the Fulham Palace one, which caters obviously for the very far west, but and I think Bexley Archaeology Group run a club as well. But sort of within the middle, there aren't any other clubs. And we keep the charges minimal because we want to include as many children as we can. We started off charging them 50p a session. It's gone up a bit now. It's gone up to £3 a session now, but if there's siblings, we just charge £2 for any extra siblings. It's just really, it goes towards paying for our materials, and we usually give them a drink and a biscuit halfway through each session, so it goes towards paying for that really. And we've got a quote here which comes from one of our mums, one of the mums of one of our children. And I'll read it out, even though it's on the screen, it's just easier. I'm always impressed with the quality of the sessions. It's obvious that a lot of research goes into what is taught and presented. The careful structure of them means the children are never bored or expected to concentrate on one thing for too long. As a parent, I often like sitting in the sessions as I learn so much, and I'm generally more interested in history as a result of this, and my daughter's enthusiasm for the subject. And that's from Natalie. She's one of our mums, and she's also a primary school teacher as well. So that's
an ex-primary school teacher. I'm not quite sure what she does now.
Yeah. So this is, you won't be able to see this very well, but it's just as a sort of an aide memoir to us really, to talk about how we communicate with our members. So every month they will get a letter which will tell them what we're going to do in the next session and ask them to respond, because we only have really the capacity for a maximum of 20. It's worth mentioning here that although we do repeat content, we like to challenge ourselves to look at different topics to keep things fresh. And we try to cover sort of interesting recent archaeological discoveries. So a few examples there, it's probably really quite difficult to see, but the third one in from the left at the top is called Lost and Found. And that was looking at recent archaeological discoveries, I think in 2023. Yeah, so, for example, on the left, the illustration there is of the Harpole bed burial, Anglo-Saxon burial in Northamptonshire, where a wonderful necklace was found. In the middle, intaglios that were found up in the bathhouse, the Roman fort in Carlisle. And then on the right-hand side, the wonderful Henry VIII and Catherine Aragon pendant that's been very much in the news of late because the British Museum are trying to buy it to keep it in this country. So that's one example of sort of lost and found. And we were talking through all those different discoveries, and that was the time we actually made the Anglo-Saxon brooches, some of which are here, the examples on the table. Lots of sort of jam jar lids and sticky jewels and things. But, and then the one directly under that is called Stranger Things, Puzzling Finds, and What to Make of Them. And the illustrations there are of a Roman dodecahedron, the little Iron Age grinders that we think were used to make up, like coal eyeliner and things like that. Neolithic stone balls, and on the right the Nebra disc. So I think that the children and the adults found that really quite interesting. We were trying to work out, what could they have been used for. So that just gives a bit of a flavour of some of the sessions, but also how we actually communicate. If we go on to the next slide. And I'll just put in, when we first started up, we had to post these letters. Yes. We do them by email now, but we had to actually put them all in envelopes.
And that was, we were working full time doing all this.
Great fun.
Yeah, at least we don't have to do that anymore.
We don't have to do that
anymore.
Yes.
So who are the Young Archaeologists? Well, these are our earliest members. This was our first cohort. Picture on the left, and at the right you'll recognise some of the same faces in at the Guildhall in one of the stagings of Gladiators. So coming from the career background in education that I did, and working predominantly in places like Lewisham and Peckham, I was very keen to broaden the demographic of what I thought would probably be a very middle class membership, because they're the parents who seek things out for their children. So we sent out a lot of letters to local schools all around that Hackney base, and we got very little response, and we didn't have the time really to chase them up. But there was a woman called Jana something. I think she was in the Community and Education or Outreach Department at the Museum of London, and she went into the primary school on the estate just over the road from Mortimer Wheeler House and talked to them there about the club, and there also happened to be there a teacher who was very enthusiastic. And so we got 5 or 6 members from very diverse backgrounds, and they used to come completely unattended. They'd come across the road to the club. We never saw their parents, and they stayed with us for a while, didn't they?
Till they went to seniors.
Till they went to seniors school. And then, yes. So some of those children are in the picture there, and it's hard to think actually that they're going to be in their mid-30s now. It's not scary. They've got families of their own. So on the next slide, I think.
And we had to take them everywhere as well, because we didn't have any parents. If we went to the museum or something, we had to take them all on the bus with us.
Yeah, so most of the parents would meet us at the Museum of London, and we'd go and do something there. But we had to go up to Mortimer Wheeler House, collect the children who were unattended, take them on the bus down to, and then take them back again. So it was a lot of work. So we had the best of intentions, but and our current membership is, there's some of our current members. So we've got around 40 on our books at the moment, with an average of 15 or so attending each session. Sometimes it slips down a bit. I mean, to be honest, if we're going to get less than 10, it's not worth our while really doing it. We ask them to say whether they're going to come, because sometimes we do have to actually say, sorry, you're too late, because we're oversubscribed. So our current demographic in terms of diversity and parental income, I think, is quite varied, really. Parents seek out the club for their children. We don't advertise. If we did, we'd have far too many that we wouldn't be able to cope with them. We have noticed a shift in parental attitude over the years. In the early days, parents would rarely stay at meetings, although they could, if they wanted to stay, they were perfectly welcome. But they used to go off and come and collect the children 2 hours later. But recently, they very often stay. In fact, the majority stay. They seem genuinely interested in the content. They are very useful in helping out with craft activities, usually helping their own child, but also sometimes helping other children whose parents haven't actually stayed. Actually, that's a granddad in the top left helping his grandchild there. Possible reasons for this, we sort of wondered, why this is. And I think there has been an increase in home tutoring, and parents who home tutor are seeking opportunities to do things with their children that are going to extend their education. So they come along and I think then build on what we do at the club. There's some children have special learning needs. There seem to be an ever-increasing number of children who have got special learning needs or on the autistic spectrum, and obviously they need a parent or a carer with them. COVID perhaps has had an impact, not quite sure sort of how, but it seems to have generally had an impact on young people. Or perhaps it's just simply a case of families enjoying spending time together, doing something that they all enjoy. So another quote, yes, we would like to thank you both for the amazing work you do and how you have engaged our son who is autistic. And that's from Imran, who is one of our mums. And we really appreciate that you managed to accommodate children of all ages while keeping the topic stimulating yet accessible. Your presentations are engaging and informative. It's always great seeing club members of all ages getting involved. And that's Karen, who we think she does home tutor. Yeah, she's got 2 sons who home tutors, so yeah.
So now we move on with our patrons and saints. Of course, the club isn't just about us. We've had loads of loads of people come through over the years to help volunteer with us, assistant leaders, and we wouldn't be able to cope if it was just the two of us. We need some help. There's just a few people pictured here. In the left-hand picture, you can spot the red shirts. There was Martin, who was somebody on your course, wasn't he?
Yes, he was on the Birkbeck course, and he became our treasurer.
Yeah, for a while. And we've got Grace again. You might see Grace in the brown there, and Louise is in
Louise.
Yeah, Louise in the red t-shirt with the short blonde hair. The other person in the red t-shirt is Verity, who I used to work with in Mola, and she came along and helped a while. Then in the middle we have a more recent volunteer, Nima, who was helping some children there mix some bits and pieces up for one of our sessions, and of course lovely Richard. He didn't always turn up in that hairdress, I must admit. It was just it was when we were doing that was Star
At
Car,
Star Car,
we were doing that
we had the hairdressers, and it was Christmas party.
Yeah,
at the museum.
That's an excuse. Right, so we move on to Lamas now, and what Lamas can do for us. From our early years, Lamas have always been supporting us. From about, I think, 2004, they started helping us out with some funds and things to help run the club, more general funds, and also with people's time. Like we've got Jane here at the Charnel House, and she's also run a couple of sessions for us to do with environmental archaeology in the past too. They also helped us during lockdown. And of course, their money helps to bring in some external people. We've got a flint mapper here, and we've had various other experts who've come in and run a few sessions for us. They helped us during lockdown in that we could use this Zoom platform that we're using tonight, so we didn't have to do, I don't know if you remember, the free Zoom only lasts an hour and then they chuck you out. So we ran some sessions on Zoom to keep the club going, otherwise it would have just petered out really, so we were very grateful for that. And they also helped to pay for, because now we've had to move to the museum in Docklands because we can't use Multiple Wheel House anymore. We have to have a host there, so we don't pay for the room, but we have to have somebody hanging around in case we have to evacuate.
A member of the museum staff.
So we pay, Lamas very kindly paid for that for us. Over the years we've had other gifts or donations from the Standing Conference on London Archaeology, or SCOLA. They gave us 200 quid for over 3 years, which we used to visit. We visited the British Museum, an exhibition at the British Museum on mummies, and we got another flint mapper in as well. In 2008-09, the City of London Archaeological Trust, they helped fund something under the London Biographies project, where we wanted to do something for our older members, the 14 years old plus members. So they funded a project that we and the Camden branch, which was running at the time, we did together with the LARC, where we paid for Nigel Jeffries and John Shepherd to talk through some finds from a site in Knight Rider Street, which is near St Paul's, which used to be, I think, used to be a pub or something like that, or an inn or something. And so they went through the finds and how do you identify the finds and that sort of thing. And then the next session, we took them to the Guildhall Library, where we looked at census returns and the old street indexes and that sort of street directories to find out who was actually on the premises during the period that the finds were from. So they really enjoyed that. We haven't been able to repeat it since, but we haven't had many older members really.
We haven't had the older members, have we? It's round about first year of secondary school.
Yeah. And then lastly, because Louise and I both worked for the museum, in theory we worked for the Corporation of London. And they had, I think they had an award thing that was volunteer of the, employee volunteering awards. And Roy Stevenson suggested that he nominated for us, and we won. So there we go. There we are receiving our. We got some money for that, didn't we?
I think we did.
500 quid. I can't
Yeah.
remember now. I think it was about 500 quid. So that came in
Yes.
very handy as well.
Yes.
So that's some of our saints and sinners. Then moving on. Saints and sinners are not really sinners, are they?
No,
They're
patrons and saints.
Patrons and saints. I know there's some saints in
Some
there
of
somewhere.
the patrons and saints.
And we've also had a generous contribution from one of our parents who enabled us to hiring some people to run sessions for us. So we have, on the top left, we have Sue, another colleague from Mola, who is also a ceramicist, and she may help the kids to make their own Roman lamps, which was lovely. And then on the top right, we got Jonathan Cope, who's he's a prehistoric specialist, wasn't he?
Yeah, he loves doing bronze.
He likes Bronze Age. So he came in and ran a whole session on the Bronze Age and bought lots of interesting artefacts for the children. And also at Christmas time, we had a lovely gift from Richard Gilpin, just before he sadly left us, and we used that for our Christmas party, which we all enjoyed, being part of a night school. We learned how to be a knight.
Yeah, and that's
there we go.
Will Ewart, who he's a squire, and he took them through their paces to become squires, yes, and knights.
And here we have a quote from, this was actually the Mark, who was the parent who helped fund the Lamps and Bronze Age guy. And he says, Annie and Karen put in an extraordinary effort to make every event interactive, unique, with deep background research and storytelling, which is both interesting for young archaeologists as well as grown-ups. Their selfless work truly deserves funding, which is always well and judiciously spent. So thank you, Mark.
I have to admit, we felt a bit embarrassed, didn't we?
I know. We're sticking all these things in. But we thought we better show that somebody appreciates what we do. Okay, and then over the years we've had so many colleagues from the museum and from Mola who've come along and helped run sessions for us. Here we've got Edwin who worked for the museum. He was also a sort of soldier, wasn't he?
Roman soldier, and he makes his own chain mail.
So that was fantastic. That was fantastic. Yeah. So he brought all that in for the kids to see. There's Alan there. Alan's a zoo archaeologist, so he came along and did a session. That was our last session that we did in Multimarilla House in November 2022, I think it was. He came along and did an animal bone session for us. There was a young lady called Lauren who worked at Mola, and she was a buildings archaeologist, and she was keen to get involved with local communities, and she took us round looked at some of the Georgian houses and things around Mortimer Wheeler House.
Looking at
and had a
architectural
few
sort of features.
Exercises to do with that. We've had Elizabeth here, and colleague Mike did a human osteology session, talking through what they do when they find human remains, and what they can tell from the human remains they find. Related to that was Sarah there. She also works at Mola. She was one of the processors at Mola. She was head of processing at Mola, and she did a similar thing about how they how you reconstruct a skeleton, basically. And she was showing the children how you know which bones are which. And of course, the lovely Adam Corsini from the Lark, he has run so many sessions for us over the years when he was at the Lark, and various tours and finds washing and all sorts of things. And he was a great friend to the club. Yeah. And now we get to the boring bits, or the admin, which we know we have to do. Yes, I'm admin. Annie's got the creative one, and I'm the admin. So over the years, the CBA they started the clubs about 1972, we think, and they have about 70 branches around the country. 20 of which are affiliated, like us. We're an affiliated club. 7 are after-school clubs, which they've only been doing for about the last 5-6 years, I think. And the rest they manage themselves. The CBA manage themselves. Many of them are run from museums or other heritage bodies, or local authorities and that sort of thing. And they have a mixture of volunteers and paid staff, paid leaders. over the years, the CBA have been very supportive to the YAC network. They fund a lot of our training we have to do to run the club. They provide insurance for us. We've got an insurance certificate up there. They do our DBS checks, our disclosure and barring checks. They run first aid training for us and safeguarding training with the NSPCC. They also run training sessions, so on different archaeological topics. Some of them are online, some of them we can turn up to. They do it all around the country. Or if there's any sort of change in legislation to do with safeguarding and that sort of thing, we also get training on that. They provide templates for, I mean, that might sound a very simple thing to do, but it helps us out enormously for our membership records and things like risk assessments, which we have to do obviously for every session. And they also ran a thing called the YAC Pass scheme, which the children get a little card, and they can, it lasts for 3 years, and they can take it to various heritage sites and historic houses and that sort of thing, and they get discounts in the shop or just to get in if you have to charge to get in, so lots of things like that. You know, in return, we have to report back to them, obviously. We need to keep them updated on what we're doing. In the past, we used to do this by hand. We used to send them a report, like the one on the left there, where we just had to itemise all that we've been doing, how many children we had coming to the sessions, and what we'd done each session, and what they'd learnt, and that sort of thing. And then we had to fill in a financial return, like the one in the middle, that said how much money we're coming in and going out. Hence, we had a treasurer when we started out. And keep records on that. Nowadays we don't do that so much. Well, we do, but we don't have to give so much detail. The finances, they just need to know how much money we've got in our bank account, basically, and how much cash we might have. They don't need to know the ins and outs for some reason. I think it's because it's not huge amounts of money. And the reporting and what we do online. They send us a link to a sort of a survey, and we go in online and we tell them what we've done and what challenges we've had and that sort of thing. And the only other thing they ask from us is once a year we now have to do a census, which is sort of along the same lines as most other groups like the Scouts and that thing do. And we just have to get the parents to what we fill in as well. But the parents have to fill in. They just are looking to know the ages, the gender, the ethnic background, and if there are any special needs of the children. And they're completely anonymised. They just do bargate things. Yeah. So most parents are quite happy to fill them in. And we have to do it for us as well, not just us, but any other volunteers that happen to be there at the time. Okay.
So, what do we actually do in meetings? We've sort of tried to divide this up into different sections. Out and about, so hands-on, visits to the foreshore and digs, visits to places of interest, exhibitions, walks and trails that we have largely devised ourselves, both indoor trails around museums and around London. On to the next.
We've got a quote there from
Phoebe.
Oh
yes, a quote. I love how we aren't always in the same place, which is now the London Museum Docklands. The trips add variety. We're not just looking and listening, but we are doing too. And that's one of our members, Phoebe, who's aged 11. This will be very familiar to all of you, the Thames foreshore. Having very few opportunities to actually visit excavation sites, let alone do any digging, the Thames foreshore has offered a really unique opportunity for our members to get their eye in and find fragments of London history, and they really enjoy going. Families enjoy going too. Our visits are obviously dependent on tides and weather, and finding a tide that is at the right time on a Saturday morning when we meet is sometimes quite tricky. But we usually manage once a year to go down actually on the foreshore at various sites. Custom House, the Queen Hythe Stretch, which is the one on the left, Tate Modern, Deptford and Greenwich. In terms of risk assessments, this environment generates a very high risk factor, as you can imagine. So health and safety briefings are essential, and we have to keep a watchful eye on parents as well as children.
Yes.
whilst we have run four short sessions ourselves, we prefer to have some experts along to help us to identify finds, and for that we've mostly relied on members of the Thames Discovery Programme, and Karen will help me here if I forget anybody. Gustav, Natalie, Elliot, Josh, Helen, Will on the left there, and Claire, yep. And their amazing foreshore recording and observation group of frogs, volunteers. And that chap in the middle, unfortunately, we couldn't remember his name. But he was really good on identifying bones, and he laid out, it's kind of a picture of a cow, but it's entirely in bones that the children actually found on the foreshore. And we have a quote, I think. Yeah. My son looks forward to every session, with mudlarking being the absolute highlight for him. The club has nurtured his curiosity of the past in a way that feels both educational and fun. A huge part of this is down to Annie and Karen. They are enthusiastic and very knowledgeable and create a really welcoming environment for the children. And that's from Isabel, who is one of our mums, whose son Henry enjoys the foreshore. Community digs. Community digs have been great for the club because, after all, most of the members just want to get down in a trench and get dirty. And they happen, not as frequently as we would like. Our first opportunity was the picture top left was in Shoreditch Park in 2005, organised by Mola Lark, and it was very handy for us because it was literally just over the road from Mortimer Wheeler House, and as well as digging, the members got to wash finds too, which is that bottom picture on the left. Over the years, we've taken part in subsequent digs at Headstone Manor and Syon Park, and we also visited the West Essex Archaeological Group at Copt Hall. I think that's the bottom middle. And then the last couple of years we've been very lucky to be invited to join Andrew Mayfield, who was the Royal Parks community archaeologist based at Greenwich Park, when they have hosted UCL students on the temple site in Greenwich Park to dig. But unfortunately, Karen told me this evening that he's no longer there, there's no funding, so whether we were really hoping we were going to be back there this year, but who knows. So some more quotes. I like the Archaeology Club because it has given me an opportunity to dig at a site and learn about things outside my school life related to history, which I love. My favourite trip was the dig with UCL at Greenwich, that's from Jaden, age 12, and the trip to Greenwich included an opportunity to talk to current archaeology students at UCL, which was such a great opportunity to find out more about what the degree is actually like. That's Natalie, one of our mums. And then we have visits to places of interest. So top left, gladiators, ×3, the number of times we actually took members to see reenactments of gladiatorial combat, which were always really good fun and enjoyed. The picture, the next one in on the top, in from the left, is actually us at Buckingham Palace. In 2006, Time Team celebrated their 150th programme, and they somehow managed to wangle permission from Her Majesty, whose 80th birthday it was at the time, to go and dig in the grounds of Buckingham Palace, because I think it was thought that they might find the remains of some English Civil War defences there. And we got an invite just to go along. There weren't that many of us. I think you were on holiday.
I was on holiday,
It wasn't an actual meeting. It was an invite that we got. But we didn't actually see much. But we did get to meet Mick Aston briefly, so that was something. The middle picture, we've done several visits to the amphitheatre at the Guildhall with Andrew Lane, the archaeologist there, explaining how it was found, structural features and finds. Then that picture is of Cutler's Hall in the city. The Worshipful Company of Cutlers hosted one of the mudlarks sessions that they now tend to do on a regular basis. So not only did we get to see a lot of mudlarkers' finds all around their hall, but we actually met some of the worshipful company of Cutlass and had a little bit of a sort of a guided tour. And we met a blacksmith who makes swords for the Royal Opera House and various productions, and the children, I think, were quite excited about that. And that picture, you can just about make out a Monica Butling-Smith enthusiastically talking to members about things that she's found on the foreshore. Top right, several visits to the Rose Theatre to look at things that have been actually found on site there, and to take part in a little drama, which we were quite surprised that one of our members actually said he'd be willing to get up and have a go.
Not as surprised as his mum was, I can tell you. She was.
Yeah. Bottom left, Jane actually took this picture for us. Visits to the Tower, where we met Alfred Hawkins, who's curator of historic buildings for Historic Royal Palaces, who took us on a private tour of the site of the Mint. Visits to the Mithraeum. More recently, the picture in the bottom at the middle, that's UCL East's campus, where they have something called the Culture Hub, and they've put on a small exhibition, Patterns Beneath Our Feet, which is finds from a dig that they did where they discovered the what they think is the first theatre, Tudor theatre or playhouse, the Red Lion, and the children were able to speak to Ian Hogg, an archaeologist who actually worked on that site, to look at some finds and to engage in some related activities. And then the picture next to that is going back to 2004, I think, wasn't it? Yes. That was the 200th anniversary of the National Gallery. And you may remember there was an excavation on the site of the National Gallery. And we were invited to go along as part of their community outreach. And that is a picture of Steve White, who actually worked on the site, talking about some of the finds, and he showed us old maps about the area and so on. And then on the right, we did a lovely visit to Highgate Woods to learn about Roman pottery kilns with Nick Pesey. And another quote, we're always excited about the bonus YAC days you coordinate, and we've loved being part of a dig in Greenwich Park, seeing the progress being made by the archaeologists at the Tower of London, speaking with archaeologists at the National Gallery and UCL East. Object handling and actual digs are always going to be opportunities to bring learning to life, and we're very grateful that you are able to make this happen. That's Karen. And then...
So now, of course, as well as all these other places, there is the Museum of London, which over the years we used an awful lot for our sessions. We had a lot of Christmas parties there, including this one, which was our first Christmas party, where we decided we'd wrap all the children in toilet roll. Which you do. But they seemed to enjoy it. It was the mummy gang, obviously. They were in little teams and they had to wrap each other up in toilet rolls. Other Christmas parties we've had there, we hired in a guy to be Samuel Pepys. So we had a sort of Stuart restoration Christmas party, and as you can see, the kids enjoyed getting dressed up for that. And we could use their rooms for free then, because I worked for the museum in some respects. Working for Moley, you were still considered part of working for the museum, so we didn't have to pay for a host or anything. So that was always very helpful to us. They also used to get involved quite a bit in Festival of Archaeology, and we used to take the kids along to that, and they'd have various reenactors in, like this guy who was showing our member how to use his weapons. A bit scary, but there you go. And when we had a Christmas party, we would often put together a trail around one or other of the galleries. So we we'd go up there beforehand and do a bit of a recce and try and pick some objects and for the children to look for, give them clues and things. Really, it was just an excuse to get rid of them for about half an hour so we could set the room up for the next activity, because otherwise it was a bit chaotic. We used to do a lot of games to start off with, and then we'd send them off somewhere, and then we'd have a craft activity. So if we could get rid of them for half an hour, and we didn't just let them run loose. We did have volunteers. Yeah, and volunteers were down there looking after them as well. And talking of trails, walks and trails, the next part of what we have organised over the years. So, our first venture into organising walks was back in 2003, when we ambitiously split the kids into 3 groups and took them along 3 different routes. One along the route of the New River, which was not that far from Mortimer Wheeler House, another one over into Hoxton, and another one up into Canonbury, which we did go to on the bus, I'll confess on that one. And we gave them all disposable cameras and told them we were going to show them various things, and we wanted them to take pictures for themselves of what they thought was interesting historically and archaeologically. And then afterwards we came back, and about a month or so later we put on a display in Mortimer Wheeler House in the visitor centre so that they could bring their parents to have a look to see what they were doing. And we think that, as far as we remember, the local MP turned up as well, yeah. I think, didn't he? I'm not sure why, but he turned up as well. We've put together a few more trails over the years, so mainly through the city, because it's easy for everybody to get there. In 2014, we did the CBA were trying to encourage people. They were having funding problems, and they were trying to encourage the YAC clubs to fundraise for them. So the Camden group decided they were going to do a sponsored walk. So they were setting off. They were going to walk from the Guildhall Yard up to St Albans, dressed as Romans. So while we didn't feel we could take part, we did turn up and see them off and wave them off. And
it was very hot.
It was a very hot day, yes, I'm glad we decided not to do it. But we waved them off, and then we met up with our group, and we did the slightly shorter route from the Guildhall to the Tower of London. So that was our next venture. And up in the top right-hand corner, on the way we stopped at Charterhouse. There was a community dig going on at Charterhouse at the time, and we could see what they were getting up to in the trench at Charterhouse. And then after our next one was just after lockdown finished, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
yes. So we walked from the monument, starting at the monument and talking about the Great Fire, down Fish Hill Street, where we talked about how the River Thames was much wider before the Roman revetments were put in, and about the original alignment of the old London Bridge. And then we got permission from St Malcolm's Martyr to take the group in to have a look round, and there's some of you I'm sure have been, there's a wonderful model in there of the old London Bridge. So we had a look at that, and then we walked along the embankment by Old Billingsgate, and another of our lovely volunteers who we haven't mentioned, Cecilia Lavrato, who's currently Archaeological Collections Manager at the Lark, although she wasn't at that time when we did that walk, who talked about medieval pilgrim badges, many of which have been found on the foreshore. And then we went on to Custom House and actually down onto the foreshore itself.
And then the next one we called the Many Layers of London Walk, and we started off at Tower Hill, and we basically followed the line of the wall. It was before the Vine Street section was open, but you could sort of peer in and see it. We walked up to where Holy Trinity Priory is at Aldgate, and then we walked back down through French Ordinary Court to down Seething Lane with all the history going on there, and we ended up at what's it called? All Hallows by the Tower.
All Hallows by the Tower.
Where this nice blue badge guide took us down into their crypt, where they've got a little museum that's got all sorts of Roman bits down there. And then in the summer of 2022, we did our big, what we call Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them in the City of London. I'm not sure why we decided to do this, but it was a good idea at the time.
It was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. We armed with a bit of info from the internet, we wandered around the City of London looking for animals on buildings, taking photos, and then we set up a trail for the children. We did clues for them. And then in the summer we set them off. They started at the monument, they went off with their clues, we disappeared off to St Paul's, which was the end point, and we met them there, and anybody who managed to finish it got a goodie bag. And we were very grateful to Tracy Wellman from Mola, who helped us design a little booklet. We put together a little booklet of all the places on the walk with a bit more information in each one, so we've still got that. I think we probably need to speed up.
I think we do.
Yes, right, okay.
Right,
we're going to speed up now. Back at base. What we do indoors.
Yeah.
Right, so things we've covered over the years: archaeology, obviously basic concept, principles, procedures. We've done sessions on different historical periods and its related archaeology, and arts and crafts.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about now. So we're moving on to...
not this, dinosaurs, but this. Rubbish, basically stuff that humans have lost, thrown away or deliberately buried, and of course buildings. Many children think that dinosaurs and humans coexisted, and they want to dig up dinosaur bones, and we explain what the difference is between paleontology and archaeology.
Okay. So, conceptualising time. It's that toilet roll again. Take one of those and a selection of those.
Dinosaur sweets.
They're sweeties. They're very nice dinosaur sweeties. And what we did was we tried to explain to the children the concept of how long human life has been on the planet. So we had this very long toilet roll, which we ran from, if I show the next picture, this isn't us, this is a school in Winchester somewhere, but we ran it along the corridor in the Lark. So if anyone's been to the Lark, it starts off at the toilets, goes along the ground floor through the reception, through the other doors, and then turns right and down the corridor down there. And we dotted it with different sweeties to say, well, this is when certain life forms came into being, and when the dinosaurs were there. They might be about 10 sheets from the end or something. And then human history was a very, very thin, like pencil width bit right at the last, on the last sheet. So we were trying to get them to understand that we haven't been here for very long at all, really.
And we also, the concept of prehistory, so before written records, to try and get that across. I think maybe we better speed up a little bit, but this was a session going right back to the end of the early Pleistocene, and again it was in response to events that had been in the news. So that you'll probably remember a few years back they found traces of human footprints up at Haysborough on the Norfolk coast after a storm. That's the picture in the middle. So we were looking at the whole concept of prehistory and the timeline of that, and the children, we got them to actually make their own lasting handprint. It couldn't be a footprint in sand, and to decorate it to take home.
Of course, we talked about stratigraphy over the years. Our first, we haven't got a photo sadly, but we had a Tupperware box that had some soil, some cat litter, unused, and some sand, and we buried different things in different layers, and so that the children could see them through the box, and they got the idea of the oldest period being at the bottom. We also used the dig a few times. The boxes stayed at Multiple Wheel House, so we could drag them out occasionally. And one Christmas party, we had a stratigraphy exercise where we drew the different periods of history and prehistory on a sheet, and we gave some little cut-out pictures of objects, and the children had to try and match the period to the object.
Yeah, they were in groups to see who could do it first, 3 groups to see
get the most right.
We've done aerial photography and crop marks. On the left, that's an area at the Google shot, actually, just taken off the web. The top, sort of right at the top corner is where Mortimer Wheeler House is. That's Shoreditch Park, and you can just about make out there the sort of lines at the top right, the green. It's a bit hard for me to explain, but anyway, Victorian streets. I think it was they were bombed very badly in the Second World War. It was levelled over and Shoreditch Park was created. And that second picture is our members, a whole line of them going across roughly on the line of those streets. I think it was, what was it? It was Salisbury? I can't remember. But anyway, Salisbury Street and Dorchester Street. And that was where the first dig that we did was actually on the site of that. This was a few years later, after it was all turfed over again. And then we did crop marks where they had little trays and they filled them with, they made their own patterns of stones and peat and sewed cress seeds over the top and took them home to see if they could create their own crop marks.
Okay, and we've covered actual excavation. This is a picture of a thing called excavations. They've got an eggshell. It was devised by Jannica Langefeld and her conservator colleagues, and it's to give the children an idea how to block lift a pot, a whole pot from a site. And they've got a little eggshell, and they sort of learn how to block lift it, and then they turn it upside down, and it's got soil inside, and they carefully excavate the soil out of it, and we put a few little gems and a 5p in it or something, so they can find something in their pot. And here's Jannica again at one of the museums, open day sort of things, talking to them about conservation of leather. So that's where a bit of conservation.
We've done quite a lot on finds and environmental archaeology, and perhaps just to focus in particular on pottery, so different types and how to recognise them: beaker pottery, Samian, Bartman jugs, Delft, willow pattern and so on, making pinch pots, beaker style pots. We also made some little Bartman jug faces, which was good fun, but haven't unfortunately got a photograph of that. Decorating paper plates in Delft style, and medieval tiles. Oh yes, and reconstructing pots as well, using rim charts and things.
And we've done lots of other finds things as well. We've got looked at clay pipes quite a bit. Up in the top left, you've got this was from the UCL day. They're drawing and measuring and trying to date clay pipes. In the middle, we're looking at roof tiles and animal prints on roof tiles. They're doing fines washing, that's the obvious picture there. Bottom left, we had a prehistoric day at the museum, and they were allowed to handle some prehistoric artefacts. And then the bottom right is at the Mithraeum, when they were looking at metal, copper objects, I think they were, that were found at the Mithraeum.
Right, arts and crafts. We better rattle through this,
Yeah,
haven't
rattle
we?
through these.
Right, so most of our in-house sessions follow the same format. We have a presentation on a theme, and it's followed by a related craft activity. And this goes down very well, and it gives the children something to take home, and it breaks things up a bit as well, because you can't talk for an hour to children. You have to have different activities to do. Over the years, we've tried making all sorts of things. Obviously, there are restrictions in terms of the cost of materials, time and the ease of making and portability. Here's a quote: "Thank you for creating a space where Emmanuel can explore his interest in archaeology and be creative at the same time." Here is his finished brooch. She actually sent a picture in to us because he finished it at home, which we will be keeping as a souvenir of a lovely day. And that's Leza. She accompanies her brother, who is on the spectrum, although he is our oldest member. Yeah. We have had, over the years, we've done various sessions on prehistoric art, using red and yellow ochre, plus our own paint concoctions, made of plant materials such as soil, berries, paprika, turmeric, egg whites. We even made our own prehistoric painting kits out of chamois leather, which included charcoal and chalk and a shell for mixing and twig brushes. And once finished, we invited the parents to see our cave walls by the light of little LED candle lights. Yeah, we can go on to the next one. Iron Age, we did Iron Age hill forts, After a presentation about hill forts, we used kinetic sand to build our own group effort hill fort, complete with Iron Age houses. And we talked about the Battersea Shield and Iron Age sort of lateen style. And they made, this was over 2 sessions, they made their own Iron Age shields out of cardboard and with string that was glued on and then sprayed with gold. And this was another great advantage of being at Mortimer Wheeler House, because we could use the outside space there to do more messy things. Now, of course, we cannot do that.
During, as we've already mentioned, during COVID, we were lucky in that we could use the Lamas Zoom platform to keep our club going. So we did various sessions. First one we did was an archaeology is rubbish one, which we've done a few times over the years, which basically means we have to collect a load of rubbish and make up various bags for different households, and they have to try and figure out what the type of household is by what their rubbish is, and they also think about what would survive in archaeology for the future. We did a Halloween session where they made, as you can see, they made some nice lanterns, and we looked at memento mori jewellery and witch bottles, and how the skeleton can tell us how a person died, and possibly their life as well. And then we did a winter party, the Winter Masquerade Party, which was basically about Georgian pleasure gardens.
Vauxhall
Pleasure Gardens. And we talked about what went on there. And we made some little pillboxes, some of which we put on the table there. And Annie and I both decided to dress up some soft toys, just because we wanted to talk about wigs.
So yeah, wigs. Wigs came in Georgian, wigs, big thing, wigs.
So we did that.
Yeah.
And then...
oh yes, and then more, we did a stitch-in time, all about textiles. So we did some weaving. We did a session on pirates, shipwrecks, underwater archaeology. This was all online. And they made captain's cabin. And then we did a session about the archaeology of bogs. Another one of our volunteers, Rose, put us into contact with Dr. Melanie Giles of Manchester University, who specialises in the archaeology of bogs. And she was very willing to do a session for us. It was very good. And we made 3-dimensional dioramas. That's an example there, showing what goes on in, underneath the surface of a bog, and bogs in a bottle. We've done lots of Viking stuff. Find out the Vikings, but also, the children like Vikings is very popular. It's on the national curriculum. So lots of tinfoil, Viking bracelets, chests decorating for hoards, looking at different hoards, and hack silver, making our own hack silver, runic writing, and so on.
In 2012 we had our 10th anniversary, and it coincided with the National YAC's 40th anniversary, so they asked us to think of unusual ways of celebrating, so we decided we were going to build a Viking village from a gingerbread kit, as you would. We set to it with the children, and we've also got a bit of shredded wheat in there, and some nice decorated biscuits, so anything that would look like it might look at home in a Viking village, really. And National YAC liked it, so we sent them a photo, and National YAC liked it so much they put it on the front cover of their magazine. So, look there. Yeah. So that was quite good.
And so we've done quite a lot on the Anglo-Saxons over the years, the impact of Viking invasions. We've looked at various excavations such as Sutton Hoo, Prittlewell, and more recently the bed burial at Harpole, Northants. And we've done map exercises searching for Anglo-Saxon and Viking place names. So we give them a sheet, and you can see them there, copies out of a modern day atlas. We give them the common suffixes and elements of Anglo-Saxon and Viking place names, and a red pen and a green pen, and they have to look at their particular sheet and see if they can identify what are Anglo-Saxon and what are Viking place names. And actually, it's a good exercise to do, because the Danelaw area comes out of it very clearly. Oh yes, and then there's some of the lovely Anglo-Saxon brooches that the children made, and a quote, the boys particularly enjoyed hunting out the Vikings using maps and place names. We've looked at medicine and the role of the apothecary on several occasions, you remember there was a molar excavation in Wood Street and associated historical detective work that uncovered the location and the identity of an apothecary in Wood Street, and members were invited to respond to this advert, which I won't read out, you can see it there. And then as apothecary apprentices, they use mini pestle and mortars to grind and mix up herbal and spiced tea remedies from a selection of herbs and spices, and they made tea bags to take home. The little envelopes there, they decorated, I think that person who did those called them Restful Sleeper and Winter Warmer teas. And we also introduced members to medieval urine charts, and we had great fun matching samples to the colour wheel, smelling, and for the brave few, tasting. It was actually, of course, apple juice and Lucozade, but that caused quite a lot of amusement, didn't it?
Yes, we didn't tell them that's what it was.
Yeah.
And then more recently, we've looked at the Roman frescoes and the Liberty site, the stuff, all the mosaics and the wonderful wall plaster and stuff that came from Liberty site down in Southwark. And Mola let us use the they've got a speeded up film of the two building material specialists trying to put all the plaster together to make a pattern, because it was all muddled up in a dump. It hadn't fallen nicely off the wall. So we then gave the children. We've got this lovely volunteer called Kathy, who came along, and she made these little mini jigsaws out of clay for the children to put together. We got them to do it without the picture first of all, and see how far they got, and then when they were struggling because they realised how difficult it is to do a jigsaw without a picture, we gave them the pictures to finish that. And then they also managed to paint some their own frescoes for the wall, so we gave them different rooms to do, and they all decided on what they were going to do their fresco of. And one of the young lads said, I always loved the activities. My favourites were painting the Roman frescoes, and I really enjoyed the night school training, which was our lovely Christmas party.
Have we got time to sort of do this last?
We can do this very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Right, pass by the challenges.
These are the issues really. It's premises funding and what's going to happen in the future. Life was a lot easier when we had obviously the dedicated base with storage space at Mortimer Wheeler House. We now use this room, which is the Jack Petrie room at Docklands, which is a great room. It's got all the facilities and everything, but we've got no storage. And this is our cupboard at Mortimer Wheeler House, which one of our cupboards, we have two of those, and we also have a load of other stuff hanging around. So it just means that we have to cart everything around with us. We can't leave anything there, so we have to keep taking it backwards and forwards to Docklands, which is a bit of a pain, especially as there isn't really any proper museum transport between the two premises anymore. And we don't, as I said before, we don't get charged for using the room, but we do get charged for paying for a host, which Lamas pay for us, which we're very grateful for. Yeah. Funding is an issue. It's always lurking there in the background as a potential issue, but luckily, kind of McCorber style, something always turns up, and Lamas often turns up, which is really, really good. It enables us to kind of have a bit of a breather sometimes. We can hire in an actor, and it pays for all the kinds of crafts materials and tools and things that we actually use. Volunteers is the next bit, isn't it?
Yep. Yes, and so over the years, as we've said before, we've relied on a lot of great volunteers, and we've had, more recently, we've had a lot of people who've actually been willing to run sessions for us as well, not just turn up and put the tables and chairs away and that sort of thing, which is what we really need. We really need people to interact, not just turn up. We've had various people here. Kathy is on the top right. She's the one who did all the frescoes and stuff for us. We've got Verity and Louise again, who used to run sessions, and we've got Helen who did the Iron Age stuff for us. we tend to get a lot of volunteers who come along and they're students, so they're quite transitory, they'll come along.
They just want really to put something to put on their UCAS form or their CV. They come once or twice and then we don't see them again.
Yeah, often it's because they've gone somewhere else,
yeah,
you know, they've moved away
or they've got a new job, or they've gone off to
yeah,
university or something.
Yeah, so what we really need is people who are going to stay and take it over from us, really.
Yeah, we want sort of older individuals who perhaps had a family, who are established in their careers, who want to contribute on a sort of a regular basis and not just stack chairs or whatever, who might like to actually do a bit of the presenting. Because, you know, it's different. It's good to have different voices in presenting and not just have us two sort of droning on. Any ideas, very gratefully received, because it is a problem. I really love running the club, and as we've said, it'll be 24 years this year, although there have been many occasions, I think, when we've wondered quite why we're doing it, especially in the wind and the rain, when we're carting stuff backwards and forwards from the station to the museum. It's difficult, and life events intervene. I mean, earlier this year I fell over and smashed my elbow, broke my elbow, and that incapacitated me for a couple of months really, and when there's just two of us, it's very difficult to keep going. I, for one, am not getting any younger either, and I haven't got the energy that I used to have. We have to face reality. We don't want the club to disappear like so many have over the years. Obviously, we will still take part in it while we can, but you know, we're getting to the point where we'd like to hand it on to the next generation. And I did say to Karen, perhaps we should have another picture here of a black hole, because there is danger of you know, London becoming the black hole again. Because apart from the Fulham Club, there are no others. But we thought we'd better finish on a
We're going to finish on a high, yes.
So although it's been hard work, we have got so much out of running the club. We've met some wonderful people. We've enjoyed learning so much and researching the topics ourselves. And actually, the putting together this presentation has actually forced us to step back and actually consider what we've done. And it's a heck of a lot, really.
It is, yeah. There we all are.
And I don't know if you want to talk about
so basically, this is just parties. This is just having fun. So we've got the cake up the top was our 20th birthday party. Oh God, what happened there? Oh, I don't know what I pressed. Sorry.
It's probably trying to tell us that time
is
probably well up.
There we go, that'll do. And there's various, we like dressing up, as you can see, so there's lots of dressing up going on. We've got various Christmas parties is usually the dressing up one. And we've got the balloon game down the bottom right, which we used to have at the Christmas parties where you had to Romans and
Romans and we had various versions where you have the balloon tied around your ankle and they're in two teams, and the idea is that you have to
burst.
I'm not sure about health and safety now. Because Karen used to disappear out
of the
room,
balloons,
so she doesn't like balloons.
I had nothing to do with that. I used to go and hide when that came on. But yes, so over the years we've had a lot of fun, and that's it. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, it's gone on a bit long.
Yeah. I don't know if you've got any questions at all, but you're probably ready to